Hello and welcome to a new episode of the Fanbase Weekly podcast. This is a special edition of the show as we are conducting a panel discussion on the 20th anniversary of the 2005 Doctor Who revival. Before we introduce our panelists, I want to note that all episodes of the Fanbase Weekly podcast this month are sponsored by the comic series Boots and Pup. We're honored to have Boots and Pup as a sponsor and look forward to sharing details about the series with you later in the show. My name is Drew Siragusa. I'm a Fanbase senior contributor and co-host of the Fanbase Weekly podcast. I will also serve as the moderator for this discussion, and my doctor is the Eighth Doctor, Paul McGann. Joining me today are Doc Wyatt, a TV writer and producer whose credits include NINJAGO, Legend of Vox, Spider-Man, Transformers Bots, Star Wars Resistance, and the Lab Press graphic novel Essentials. Hi, Doc. Who's your doctor?
It's Tom Baker. Tom Baker, 100%. A little, though. Also, Shooty got one now. I love Shooty. So
He's been fantastic.
Yeah, but Tom is, he's my guy.
Nice.
My hero.
Nice. Corinna Bechko, a writer whose credits include Invisible Republic, Green Lantern Earth 1, Sister Imperator, and BLOODTYPE from EC Comics. Corinna, who's your doctor?
Fourth Doctor. I mean, you really can't go wrong there. I totally understand. I get it, and that is the correct answer.
There's no wrong answer. I will say
no,
that.
There is no wrong answer.
Yeah. Erik Amaya, editor-in-chief of Comiccom.com, the comics on TV columnist at Rotten Tomatoes, and co-host of the podcast TREAD Perilously, which is part of the Fanbase Press Podcast Network. I know who your doctor is, but would you like to share with everyone else?
Yeah, no, sure. I'll do the answer that I always say. They all are, but it's really Patrick Troughton.
Yes, nice. Tilly and Susan Bridges. Tilly and Susan are a writing team, most recently writing for season 2 of Monster High animated series, for which they won an inaugural Velma Award for the LGBTQIA representation in children's media. They also consulted on season two of Star Trek Prodigy and are currently writing the Star Trek Voyager Homecoming comic miniseries for IDW, a YA queer trans rom-com graphic novel from Mad Cave Studios, and another as yet announced graphic novel series still under NDA. Tilly's book Begin Transmission, The Trans Allegories of the Matrix, is available now, and you can find Tilly's weekly essays on trans life at tillystranstuesdays.com. Ladies, who are your doctors?
You want to go first? Do you want me to go first?
Yeah, we're still new to Doctor Who. So
we are very new.
Seen all of it yet?
We've seen all of modern Who.
Right. So yeah. I would say so far, I'm gonna say Smith, but also Gatwa is really charming the pants off. Like, he is really charming.
My generation literally charmed his pants off.
That is true.
He's very good, but for me, it's Jodie Whittaker all the way.
Phillip Kelly, a Fanbase Press contributor. Phillip is also a member of the podcast group POPSKL, as well as a professional performer, writer, filmmaker, and comedian. Phillip, who's your doctor?
Hey, good morning. I don't think I have one that stands above the rest, but I will say that Eccleston was my first doctor that I watched from beginning. I mean, grew up with Tom Baker kind of in the background, though I never watched. I read some of the comic books, but Eccleston was my first, and I think that's where I'm rooted, I think,
nice.
First and foremost. So,
okay, so summary of the Doctor Who reboot, in case people are unaware of what it is, according to Wikipedia, is the first series of the 2005 revival of the British series fiction program Doctor Who began on March 26th, 2005, with the episode Rose. This marked the end of the program's 16-year absence from episodic television following its cancellation in 1989, and the first new televised Doctor Who story since the broadcast of the television movie starring Paul McGann in 1996. The final episode, The Parting of the Ways, was broadcast on June 18th, 2005. The show was revived by longtime Doctor Who fan Russell T Davies, who had been lobbying the BBC since the late 90s to bring the show back. The first series comprised 13 episodes, 8 of which Davies wrote. Davies, Julie Garner, and Mal Young served as executive producers. Phil Collinson as producer. The show depicts the adventures of a mysterious and eccentric Time Lord known as the Doctor, who travels through time and space in his time machine, the TARDIS, which normally appears from the exterior to be a blue 1950s British police box. With his companions, he explores time and space, faces a variety of foes, and saves civilizations, helping people and righting wrongs. The first series features Christopher Eccleston as the ninth incarnation of the Doctor, his only series in the role, accompanied by Billie Piper as his first and main companion Rose Tyler, whom he plucks from obscurity on planet Earth, and to whom he grows increasingly attached. He also travels briefly with unruly boy genius Adam Mitchell, played by Bruno Langley, and with 51st century con man and former time agent Captain Jack Harkness, portrayed by John Barrowman. Episodes in the series form a loose story arc based upon the recurring phrase Bad Wolf, the significance of which goes unexplained until the two-part series finale. Alongside the Bad Wolf arc, the revival era reintroduces the Doctor as a sole survivor of an event known as the Time War, which the Doctor claims wiped out all of the Time Lords and the Daleks. So, panel, did you watch the reboot when it came out in 2005, or did you catch it later? Additionally, how would you describe your relationship with Doctor Who as a fan? Phillip, because you have a cat, you caught my eye, so let's start with you.
I do. Okay, yeah. She catches people's eyes more than I do. I will say that. I did not watch it when it first came out in 2005. I think maybe, when did I start watching? I think as the Capaldi era, or just before then, was getting started. I was going through the series. Something I had been meaning to watch, but my ex finally sat me down to watch it. And so we did, like, boom, zoomed right through it. And I would put Doctor Who probably in my top 3 to 5 favorite, like, expanded universe series out there. It fills my heart up with so much joy that anytime the world is kind of falling apart, that's kind of what I go to. I don't go to Star Wars. I don't go to Marvel or anything. Like the Doctor is kind of like my source of healing in the world. So yeah, I'd say that's my relationship with the Doctor as a fan and the series.
Nice.
Yeah.
Erik, how about you?
Oh boy, here we go. I'm going to use a phrase that a certain Doctor Who fan will recognize: Mad Martha. That is how you had to watch the show in 2005, because it did not have a broadcast partner in the US. So you basically had to find ways, and that way was known as Mad Martha. I was definitely there. I think I even got my hands on the leaked version of the first episode. So I saw it with the wrong title music. They were actually using a different variation. I don't think it was Murray Gold at all in that version of it, but it basically sounded like Doctor Who, and otherwise it is the episode. Let's see my relationship to it. If not for Doctor Who, I wouldn't have a dress sense. It's as simple as that. My fashion icon is the Doctor in all of their incarnations.
Great. Susan and Tilly, how about you?
We are very new, which is why you wanted us to be here to get a different perspective. Yeah, we only started watching, I think, like October, November of last year. And we've now made it through all of the modern seasons.
That is impressive.
Yeah, thank you. I guess. Yeah, so, it's a thing that our friends had always tried to get us into. Oh, you've got to see Doctor Who. You've got to see Doctor Who. It's so great. And we're huge sci-fi nerds. It seemed right up our alley, but we had just never gotten into it.
I think it was intimidating. There's like so much of it.
Yeah,
you're just like, what do I do with this?
But also, well, some of our friends, when they were trying to get us into it, were like, you've got to see Blink. It's the most amazing thing. This will get you into Doctor Who. And as someone who had never seen Doctor Who, that did not help us get into Doctor Who. He's barely even in the episode. You don't know what he is or what he does or what the show's about.
Yeah.
I think that turned us off for a really long time. We're like, well, I don't get this. This is not for us. And so recently we decided to give it a shot. We started with Eccleston from the beginning all the way through. And now I love it. Some of those early seasons were very problematic in a lot of ways, and were a little tough to get through, but I love it so much now for what it is and what it tries to be.
Great.
Yeah, I agree. I like that it's a little goofy.
Yes.
They're way more hand wavy with science than even Star Trek.
Mhm.
Like sometimes you're like, really? That's quite a leap. Okay, that's where we're going. All right.
I mean, keep in mind, Douglas Adams was a writer on this show at one point, so that helps with the hand wavy science.
I do love Douglas Adams.
Yeah.
And I think also as writers ourselves, like I used to be like so anti time travel stories. I was always like, no, they're so hard. And I feel like it de-intimidated those kinds of stories to me because, there's so many. How hard could it be? They've made 1 million of them. But I do appreciate the humor of it and yeah, the goofiness of it because we like to do goofy stuff too. So that's definitely it made it kind of in our hearts.
Yes. How about you, Corinna? Did you watch it in 2005?
Yeah, I was totally there, like Erik. I was a huge fan. I remembered watching The Fourth Doctor when I was a little kid with my dad when they would show on PBS. And as a nerdy girl growing up in Florida who did not like mean stuff, like I liked acerbic, but I didn't like mean, and that was sort of difficult at the time, but the Doctor like hit right there, especially um there were those gothic episodes during the Fourth Doctor that I just loved, and it was all about, he just went for solutions because humanity was worth saving even when we suck. And so I was really ready for that with the reboot. And I know I totally recognize Tilly the problematic aspects, and I see those, and I totally acknowledge that. But at the same time, I have a hard time just because it filled such a gap for me when I was a kid. Like I love it with all my heart, while accepting that those are things that maybe could be better. And I'm sorry about my cats are like
Don't
being
apologize for
behind
cats.
me. So.
That's fine. Doc, and how about you?
I would describe Doctor Who as my religion. It is a guiding principle in my life. My relationship to Doctor Who started in 1985 when, as a kid, I stumbled halfway through on my local. I grew up in Atlanta, Georgia, the local PBS station, Georgia Public Television. I turned on halfway through an episode or a serial uh, called City of Death. And I was halfway through it, had no idea what was happening, and fell in love so that was my, Pyramids of Mars, Genesis of the Daleks, Deadly Assassin. That was my sort of origin to Doctor Who, entry to Doctor Who. And yeah, when the new series was coming out, there was, like Erik was saying, it was really difficult to see it. They didn't have broadcast partner yet. Space in Canada was airing it, but like sometimes some PBS stations were getting it. So what I did is, as soon as the season 1 box set was available in the UK, I ordered it from a UK website. You had to get a DVD player that played that region, was a region-free DVD player, and I watched it on British DVD. That's how I saw the first season. So I binged it all at once.
Fantastic.
and that box took up a lot of space.
It was
hilarious.
But it was
so big.
Long dimensions and yeah. And all the glue came off, and I had it. I actually got it signed at Gallifrey one year by a bunch of creators, but the glue came off all the pieces, and it just literally disintegrated like front toes, actually.
Yeah, when they finally put out that slimmer version of it, I was like, yes, please, I will buy this again.
Great. So panel, how do you believe the show holds up 20 years later? What has aged well and what has not? Tilly, we've already touched on it briefly, and you and I have talked about this outside of this. So let's start with you.
Okay, so some of those early seasons, I think all the way up until, well, it even went through Matt Smith seasons. Like, I think, and there was a little bit of it even in Peter Capaldi seasons. The fat phobia on this show is horrific. It is so bad. There are women that are stick thin that are getting fat jokes made at them, and that's really hard to deal with. But there was also, it's had homophobic jokes, it's had transphobic jokes. And, shows are always a product of their time and the people that make them and the implicit biases that those people have. But it can be kind of hard, especially as a new fan coming to it to get through that, because there's so much there that I do love. The kindness at the heart of it, the goofiness, the sense of fun and exploration. And I love all of that, but it's got some blemishes that are there, especially those early seasons. The first 3, 4, I think the fat phobia was just so hard every time to deal with and get through. So, like as a brand new fan coming to it, it was a little bit of a barrier. It was like I can see so much good stuff under the surface of that, but that was hard to get through for me.
Susan?
I think also, especially with Eccleston and Rose, like especially at the beginning, she needed to be rescued like all the time. And it was just like, oh my God, again, okay. Like just making her to be, not very smart or just getting trapped in these weird situations. And yes, the doctor is smart and, a different being. And I think they kind of fixed that as time went on. Like it wasn't quite so every episode, but yeah, that was a lot.
Corinna, how about you?
Yeah, it's funny because when it actually first aired, like I was so excited about it and so excited to see that there was more diversity. Like they had planned to have more diversity and with Russell and actually I think at the time he was talking about that and compared to the earlier iterations where everybody was white and it was very, I mean, of course, it's very British, but it's very British. And to have a little bit more of a diverse cast was really refreshing. But yeah, looking back at that now, some of the things that at the time I was just kind of like, huh, okay. And now I'm like, whoa, what were they doing? I mean, I suppose this is the problem with looking back at a lot of things, and I fear things getting made right now that are pandering in certain directions are going to be completely unwatchable in 20 years, right? But it's a definitely a mixed bag. Like there's a lot of good in there, and it's good that it brought it into the modern era, and I love that they put the Doctor back into the public consciousness because I felt like I was the lone voice in the wilderness going, I love Doctor Who. And everybody's like, you love what now? So I'm glad it's back and I'm glad it continues to evolve. And I hope that it continues to do better on those things. So it is, some of that is kind of like, I wish they could just, I don't know, retroactively time travel to fix some of that to maybe.
But sometimes it is nice to look back and see the progress that has been made is an important,
That's a good
right?
point
Like,
too. I mean, at least I can see it now. I suppose that makes me happy about myself, maybe. I don't know.
yes. Doc, how about you?
I would say that what's aged really well about this is the incredible way. I mean, I think RTD was a real genius at how to reboot or bring back, resurrect an old series. Like he could have done anything. I mean, RTD could have written his own check. He could have started with the first Doctor. It could be a true reboot, like a remake. It could have been anything. And what he said is, I accept everything. I accept everything that's ever happened, warts and all. I accept that, a Web Planet happened. I accept that an American Doctor Who movie got made where he was half human. Like I accept everything and I just move forward. And like bringing that sort of first personalizing companion, because you loved old school companions, Sarah Jane, Joe, Ace, they were amazing. But there was like backstory was like Tegan was like, oh, my aunt, or oh, I'm late for a plane, and that was the backstory for Companion. You know what I mean? Like Turlo, who is he other than like an odd comment here or there, you know? And Rose, I mean, to start the first episode, not with the doctor, but with the companion and what the companion experiences, and how this idea that human stories mattered in important ways, that you met a companion's mother and her boyfriend, and that was a part of who she was and how she brought things, you know, that experience of being with the doctor. You know, you see that also with Amy. And I mean, really, it revitalized Doctor Who in a way that made it so much more human, so much more personal. And it just was a great direction to take the show. I know it was very, you know, RTD said it was very Buffy influenced, you know, but that going from those half-hour serials that were very, you know, plastic monster heavy, to the sort of idea of exploring the world matters because of who you are, really, really felt good. And that it was a great way to bring back the franchise and make it relevant, make it important. I think that there could have been a lot of terrible Doctor Who reboots, and that may have been even closer to the original, but wouldn't have made it relevant and made it matter.
Yeah. Philip, how about you?
As has been stated by the ladies on the podcast, there's a lot of stuff in there. You know, I went back and I watched Bill and Ted not too long ago, and you're partway through and you're like, oh, they said that. You're just like, okay. I mean, I still love Bill and Ted. I still think it's great. I still think for the most part it has its heart in the right place, and these characters are lovely. And I felt this last week. Well, this is the first time I've watched this season again since first watching it, like a decade ago or whatever. So I hadn't revisited this specific season. And I had the same reaction. You know, you're watching, you're like, ooh, it's like stepping on Legos. You know, Legos are fun until you put your foot on them, right? So yes, there were definitely moments like that while watching the show. Even at times, Rose's and the doctor's sort of romantic relationship, I was a little like, ooh, ugh, she's 19. Slow down there, buddy. Got a little weird at moments. But the stuff that has, like, one of the things I did notice that has kind of permeated is the doctor himself. This, like, Eccleston's performance just laid the groundwork for like every actor playing the doctor since. And I love that. I love that this was so strongly grounded, and they found it like right away from the first episode. Um, and I think that sort of the heart of the doctor in the modern age has stayed strong, even when the show is sort of faltered. In those the first couple seasons we're discussing here. So, yeah, I think that's what I have to say about that right now.
And Erik, how about you?
Oh boy, here we go. So some of the creative highs that I think have aged very well is we'll start with this. One of the great things that Russell T Davies does is he can give you a character within a scene, and there's so many episodes in that first season where it's Rose meets a working class blue alien. She meets Gwyneth in The Unquiet Dead, and you just get a whole world around these characters in, I don't know, maybe a minute and a half of interaction with Rose. That stuff is amazing. Yeah, there are the problematic elements. There's the farting aliens. The thing that definitely hasn't aged well, though, one thing is the look of it. Like, that first season looks so cheap. But it's also kind of nice that the kind of going from, if you look at season 26 of the classic series, there is kind of continuity there, that it goes from that cheap looking video to the cheap looking video of 2004. And then in the 2006 series, you actually get a show that looks good. So to me, it's interesting how it still looks like cheap Doctor Who in the first season. I think that aspect hasn't aged well.
It's funny. I think on the DVD somewhere they were talking about how impressed they were they're like, we have the greatest special effects, and they're like, but you know what? I hope that when you go back and look at this decades from now, it'll look like watching old Doctor Who, where you're like, that did not age well. So panel, how do you think Rose does as an introduction to the show? Does it do a good job introducing or reintroducing the show? if someone were to start the show, would you suggest they start there or someplace else? Corinna, let's start with you.
You know, when I was trying to like connect with the me of watching this for the first time when I worked so hard to actually get my hands on this when it first was, and at the time I was very happy. Like I remember being like, oh, interesting way to go. I always enjoy the doctor companion dynamic, and I was a little bit like, I mean, I know that she's sort of a divisive character in a lot of ways, but um, I don't know. I was right there with it and thinking that was a good way to go because the doctor is the weird aspect, and Rose is just a woman from Earth. And I don't know. I have a soft spot for that, and I actually have a soft spot for the entire first reboot season because I just was so happy to have it back, you know?
Yeah. And Doc, how about you? How do you think the first episode does to get people back or get new people in?
Yeah, I do think it's a great access point. I know plenty of people who, well, people on this panel have said they started with Eccleston, with Rose, and it is like you don't start from the doctor's point of view. It doesn't pick up from the end of Survival or something. Like it's not, cat people on an alien world. It's, it starts with somebody's, coming home from work and somebody's going back to their flat. And that I think is a great access point in. Absolutely.
Yeah. Philip, how about you?
Sure. Well, I think honestly, like Doc was saying, I love Rose Tyler. It grounds us in like a very human world, very human aspects of the Doctor Who universe. And I think coming off of what the Doctor has come off of, what you find out as you watch is he's living with grief and anger and all these other things, and putting the focus on Rose like that, I think really through her eyes, we help the Doctor find sort of his humanity again by the end of this season. Which I think Rose is a really grounding factor in, that sort of story arc between the two of them. And it also, like, not starting with the Doctor right away in that first episode also builds like a sort of anticipation to finally see the Doctor, right? Like if we were to start with the Doctor, that'd be cool, but like there's this like building of suspense, like when is he going to show, and when when he does, it's like wonderful, right? You're ready for the adventure by that point. So yeah, I think Rose is a great character that, again, like with the Doctor, they found the voice for these characters like right away. Like it tends to be in a lot of series, it takes a couple episodes, right? But even Rose's mom, like right away, you have a clear idea of who she is, and because of that, you get a really clean story arc for her as well, or Mickey and all these other great characters. There's just, yeah, it really wonderful like story work and character work done on this series, especially with the human side of it.
Yes. So Erik, if Rose were your first episode, would you keep watching?
Okay, that is so tough. Thanks for using the Tread Perilously
Yes.
question. Wow, that is so tough because I've been sitting here this whole time thinking, the 11th Hour and The Woman Who Fell to Earth are better entry points than Rose, and that's tough because you have those two episodes. But if you don't have those two episodes, then yes, Rose is something that I watched for the first time. Like, yes, I'm staying with this. I mean, it's not my first entry point to Doctor Who, which was part 4 of The Power of Kroll. And I told Russell T Davies this once, and he was like, wait, you saw the rubber monster and decided to keep going? Like, yes, absolutely. But where Rose doesn't have a rubber monster, it does have this
A
really
plastic monster.
it has a plastic monster, it has the Autons, but it also has this really compelling mystery, with, well, who is this guy and what's his deal and what is a police public call box? And I think those mystery elements would do it more for me in that situation. But if I have The 11th Hour and The Woman Who Fell to Earth, I think those are better entry points at this point. I think they get to the core of the show a bit better. But Susan Tilly, I don't know if you've seen it yet, but how do you compare Rose to those other entry points, The 11th Hour and The Woman Who Fell to Earth?
I do not remember episode titles or what happened in them very well, so that I cannot tell you.
Okay.
But I can tell you that the very first episode, as people who had never seen Doctor Who before, except for Blink, which gave us nothing to grab onto, I thought it worked really well. I was invested. I loved Rose. I love all the companions, by the way. They're the Doctor's cats, as Susan likes to say, and they're all perfect babies. But it got me into the show, but the issue it gave to me, and I don't know if you share this, Susan, but I found Eccleston, particularly in that episode and through that season, abrasive. It made me kind of not like the Doctor. I'm like, why is this guy such a dick? Right? And I'm like, why isn't he being nice to her? She's just this nice lady that doesn't know what's going on. And so for that entire first season, I was all about Rose, and I didn't really care about the Doctor because I thought he was kind of an ass. And it wasn't until Tennant came in that I started to see more kindness come through. And I'm like, I love that so much. So that was a weird perspective for me, that the show was about ostensibly the Doctor and not the companion as much. And I was way more into the companion for that first season. Yeah, Rose got me into the show.
That's a big shift from the old show to the new one, as Davies focused a lot more on the companions. Doc, you look like you had wanted to add something there.
I did. Yeah, I want to say I agree. Like, I know, no offense to panel Erik, I think said that Eccleston was his favorite Doctor. I love Eccleston as an actor. I feel like when you see Eccleston in like Cracker, when he loses his wife, or in one of those dramas, one of those northern dramas about the drama of being northern and all that, that he's a very naturalistic actor, that he's very, like, you feel like you're watching a real human go through this stuff. But when Eccleston was the Doctor, I love him, this is not, he's great, but when he was the Doctor, it didn't feel like it was one of those Eccleston naturalistic performances where you were watching a real person. It felt like he was an actor putting on a pantomime. Like, it felt a little more performative. Like, maybe Eccleston's approach was, look, I'm doing a show for kids, so I'm gonna maybe be a little broader, be a little more theatrical, and it is not. I love all the Doctors, but I do feel like when Tennant comes in, and it really locks in, like Tennant locks into the Doctor in a way that I feel like Eccleston kind of was a little bit more on the surface of the Doctor. That said, his first episode, Christmas Invasion, is not a great entry point. Like, it wouldn't, I've never once, I have a lot of, through the years, a lot of people have said, where should I start with Doctor Who? And I've given different answers. I've never said Christmas Invasion. Like, that is just too strange an entry point.
Yeah. Susan, let's come back to you. How about you? What are your thoughts on this?
I feel like I do agree, I think, with what Doc is saying about Eccleston, where like it felt a little weird. And a lot of that first season, like, even though like every Doctor after Eccleston is doing a little bit of a version of Eccleston after that, I feel, but I couldn't figure out like the companion relationship, like, because this was the first time I had seen it, and I was trying to be like, what is this exactly? And I agree too, Phillip, that at points it felt a little weird and creepy. Like they hadn't quite figured out that dynamic. And like as the show goes on, you're like, okay, the Doctor is basically above them and doesn't see them as equals. And so that makes a lot of sense. And like, there's no relationship here in a romantic way, because that's silly. And that's where I came up with my theory that all the companions the Doctor sees as cats. Like, they don't live very long. They're a lot of fun. They're cute and adorable. And I want to show them a good time. And they're not going to live very long. And all of this, the Doctor knows. So I feel, though, yeah, the Eccleston Rose thing, I do appreciate Rose as a character too. It took a while for me to understand the Doctor companion dynamic, just because of the way it was presented in that season, I think.
Well, you know what's weird though is that I really, really dislike when the companion gets romantic feelings for the Doctor.
Yeah.
Except for Yaz and Whittaker, who are perfect together. That's the only time that I ever felt
I agree with that.
I can get this.
And yet that never really pays off.
It's so melancholy.
Yeah.
I lost my thought. Never mind. Keep going. That's all I wanted to say.
know,
Apparently, that's
yeah.
all I had to say. I lost my thought.
Actually, to go back to Eccleston as this sort of, or the Ninth Doctor as this abrasive character, I think you have a couple of interesting things going on there. Is you have the fact that he is the trauma doctor, you know,
Yeah.
that he believes that he's killed everybody and kind of goes through his life that way, until he, you know, kind of heals himself and regenerates into a substantially younger person. But then you also have the behind the scenes situation where Eccleston, basically from day one, is uncomfortable in this part and is having a lot of tension with the director of that first production block. He's having a lot of tension with the producers. And even though apparently things got better by the end of the season, they were so rough that he was ready to walk like day one. And there was like a crisis meeting about the fact they were about to lose their star. So I think some of that's bleeding into the performance too. But if you want to like make it all a story thing, it's like, yeah, the doctor is putting on a pantomime because he doesn't really know how to be the doctor anymore. And you get this nice thing of, you know, a year of stories hanging out with this teenage girl, and it somehow reminds him, oh wait, this is how I used to be before, you know, endless years of war.
Yeah, that's shown perfectly in I remember dancing. I remember I knew how to dance. And I love that scene. And he's like, oh wait, I got it. I remember. Like he's slowly finding, and I was going to bring up what you're talking about too, where yeah, this is a doctor who has definitely lost himself due to a grief that is pretty intense. And is kind of finding himself again. So I would agree with that. And Susan and Tilly, I will say the second time watching this season I found was much more gratifying because I was even it was a little rough for me to get into at first, my first viewing of it. And now I'm just like, now that I understand the doctor better, I was like in right away and I could see it all perfectly.
Yeah, I would see that definitely. I think also too, as someone coming in on those seasons, well, I think that's a great intro to everything, you know, and get you into the world and everything. Coming at it in 2024 when we started, to see this show that so many people love and have told us about, and it's just another angry cishet white man, I'm like, why?
Sure.
Why do you love this show? I get Rose, I get the concept, that's great, but why do you love this character? Because that was so off-putting at the start, you know? So it's wild. I wonder what it would be like to go back and watch it now, having seen all of Modern Who.
Doc, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I think that that abrasiveness has been a part of the character in a few different iterations. I feel like the first Doctor was kind of
for sure.
Threatened to spank a companion at one point, and like there's the sixth Doctor who was egotistical and abrasive, and chokes out Perry when he regenerates. It chokes out Perry, which is maybe a low point of the entire show. Maybe, I mean, a real mistake, a real miss. And of course Capaldi. I mean, that she's my carer, so I don't have to care. Kind of that idea of abrasiveness, though I suppose there's an undercurrent. He's also the be kind doctor. So you know, there's a little bit of the shell versus the heart with that, you know, but I do think that maybe like you're being very kind to the show by retroactively saying, oh, well, you know, the Time War, and, you know, he was a bit of a jerk because he's just been through some. And I think there's a real validity to that, but that's subtextual. You're bringing that, like, at no point, I struggled to believe that Eccleston made some of those performance decisions because he was thinking to myself, I just ended Gallifrey, you know, I don't know. It seemed more surface. I could be wrong.
No, I think you're right. I think it's very much retroactive, building on the fact that you have this performance and you have to do something with it. I think at its core, he was always uncomfortable as the Doctor, and once the relationship between him and Russell T Davies broke down, all RTD could do was sort of, okay, I'm going to build this character around the fact that my main star is uncomfortable being here. And we get that. But you reminded me also, I remember at the time talking to friends in the UK, and they were actually all kind of off-put by Eccleston. The most common comment was the fact that his smile was a gurn, and they hated the gurning Doctor. Because it was just the most uncomfortable smile in the world. And yeah, it was.
It doesn't reach the eyes. Yeah.
All right. Well, as we've touched on earlier, the Doctor companion dynamic is a key feature of Doctor Who. What are your thoughts on the Doctor Rose, the rest of the characters? My favorite companion, Captain Jack. Was it a good decision to focus on Rose's life outside of the TARDIS, or would you rather just the old school way of sticking with just the adventures? Doc, let's start with you.
I love the Doctor, the cat theory, which is the first time I've heard that, and that's fantastic. I love the Doctor companion dynamic. I love the shifting dynamics. I love it when it changes up. I love it when there are multiple companions in the TARDIS. Each iteration is great. I think my favorite companion is by the Tom Baker roots in the classic show. It was Leela because she was so different than him. She was this, all about nature and the world, and she would detect things that he didn't detect, and then he couldn't admit that she was right. He would call her savage to try to cover for the fact that she was doing better than he was. And in the modern show, yeah, I tend to agree with the comment earlier. I think maybe Tilly said it, or maybe Susan, that I don't love it when there's romantic tension, like Martha being moon-eyed for the Doctor, or anytime there's sort of romantic tension. It's not my favorite thing because he's centuries and centuries old, and will outlive them by a mile, and it never feels quite like. I mean, I will say, with the exception of 13 and Yaz, which felt a little bit more real, but also didn't end up actually paying off or going anywhere, like that I don't prefer the romantic dynamic, but that the dynamic of, like, I am alone. I am maybe the last of my species, depending on where we are in the continuity of that and the lore of that. But like, I am alone. I'm the last of my kind. But I have a box that can take me anywhere and any place. And will you go with me so I can show it to you? This idea that, like, that experiencing the universe is so much better when you're showing it to, especially if you've been in the universe for 800 or 900 or 1200 years, depending on, again, where we are in the timeline. Like that it's like, I've seen it all, I love it all, but now I'm showing it to you, and I get to see it for the first time through your eyes, and the danger and the joy and the love of that that's what I love about the Doctor companion relationship. There have been solo Doctor episodes, Deadly Assassin, there's no companion, but it's when he or she, when they get to convey something about the universe to someone who's never experienced that before. That's the joy of that relationship.
Yeah. Philip, what are your thoughts?
I mean, as I mentioned, I love all the side, human characters here. It adds, 'cause I went back, like, while I was watching the Eccleston season for the first time like a decade ago. I also went back and I watched the first season of the Hartnell series because I was like, I want to know who the Daleks are before I get to Dalek.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, uh, and so I did that, and it was really cool seeing. I don't know, like. You look at a baby picture, then you look at an adult picture, and that's what it's like. You know what I mean? And you don't catch all the stuff in between, but you're like, that's what you look like when you're a baby, and that's what you look like. I can see some similarities. Oh, there are the eyes. You still got the dimple. So that was really fun, and I think what doing that does, focusing on the human characters, it really does add a level of stakes that, having only seen the very first, like I've seen all of Hartnell now. You don't necessarily get those same kind of stakes, like you do when you really focus and pull in all the human characters and ground them and develop them. Because great episode with Rose's dad, which ultimately, wasn't needed, right? But it does ground all of these characters in such a real way, and it grounds Rose, and it gives her, I think, maybe for the first time in the series, it really does give her agency over what happens in the story. She is the one who makes the decision outside of the Doctor's sort of control, or it's a really beautiful, very character-driven little episode. It's great. So yeah, I really do like how the stakes are affected, and how the world is affected. And it it allows for the doctor to show so many different sides of himself that maybe in this case he wouldn't be able to show otherwise. So yeah, I love it.
Nice. Erik, what about you?
I'm gonna focus on the family portion for a moment because I remember watching that first episode 20 years ago and hating Jackie, just finding her awful. And the magic trick there is how by the time you get to the end of the story with Jackie and Rose and Pete, Jackie's like my favorite character. Like one of the great things, and this is something that I think Russell T Davies is better at, is how he can make those family members matter. Like Jackie is an all-time great. Sylvia Noble is all-time great.
Wilfred Mott.
Wilfred Mott, all-time great. To the point where you really do feel that absence during Moffat's time because Amy's parents literally don't exist. They were eaten by the crack.
And then show up for the wedding and never mention again.
And then show up for the wedding and never mention again, right? Clara's family matter for about 20 minutes and then never again.
She has multiple fathers on that show.
Right? Yeah. No, right. It is so bizarre how much Moffat doesn't care about the storytelling potential in any of that stuff. And maybe it's because he wanted to have that contrast, but it's a really nice storytelling tool to have these people that are left behind. And they can become characters in their own right. They can kind of mark the passage or the character progression of the companion that actually goes with the doctor. And then you get things like the fact that Jackie and Sylvia slap the doctor and the doctor has to live with it.
Yeah, that was amazing.
Yeah. Susan Tilley, how about you?
You go first.
I agree, Erik. It is kind of like when you're looking at the Rose relationship, I think it would have been a lot easier to not give her a family. It feels easy, like the easy choice. And yet it was kind of nice to see, like, you have Rose and she's not running away from a terrible situation. This is a hard decision for her at many points because she loves her family. She has a good relationship with them, but she also loves traveling with the doctor. And I think that tension there at different points is a lot of fun. And a lot of later things like Amy and Rory, like I love their relationship. I loved the episode where he protected her for like 2,000 years and that they, the angel sent them back in time. Like all of that was really additive, I think, to the story in a really, really great way.
Yeah, I feel like you need the companions because outside and to be developed and to have an interior life outside of the doctor, because except for a few rare instances, the doctor is almost always static. They don't change much, right? And so in order to get character development and growth, like you see a little bit of that with the doctor, but it happens so piecemeal, so slowly over time that in order to get those personal stakes, to get you involved, you need something to grab onto, and the companions give you all of that. And it's fascinating to me that I've seen a lot of people say about Whittaker's time as the doctor is that they felt the companions weren't as developed as in other seasons. And I find that absolutely wild because in her seasons, the doctor gets the most development out of any of Modern Who. That's where the doctor changes so much. She's dealing with, the fugitive doctor and the timeless child and all of this stuff that you learn about the doctor that you didn't know before. And that is so rare. And so it's so interesting that those 3 seasons turned the dynamic on its head. And it was more about the doctor than it was about the companions. And how many people sort of pushed back against that because they're so used to attaching to the companions in that way, and that humanistic, emotional way, I think.
Yeah. Corinna, how about you?
Well, I feel like the companions being like showing their families and all of that, the thing that's really interesting about the Doctor Who companion dynamic to me is that the Doctor is this sort of could be a kind of godlike figure. He can do things to space and time and has magic, like, a sonic screwdriver is a magic wand, basically. It can do what needs to be done in the episode, and you can figure things out, and he's got this intellect, but the thing he actually needs is somebody to ground him and tell him, yeah, you're also just a dude. And I feel like a lot of people, when they lose track of the fact that they're just some dude or some lady or whatever, they get into trouble. And maybe cats are good for this for us. I mean, certainly my cats keep me
Yes.
humble. I cannot control them. They do what they want. And if I think that I can, that's when I have to admit that, yeah, I'm not smarter than them, really, in some ways. So I feel like I really love Donna. Like, when she came along and that episode, I was not excited about. I was like, oh my God, I believe it's called The Runaway Bride. And I was just like, what is this going to be? We're going to have these stereotypes and, oh, we're going to make fun of how she looks and whatever. And then it turned out to be that she just will not take any shit. And I actually loved, I mean, full disclosure, I love Tennant. The 10th Doctor is my second favorite. And I find him charming and beautiful in pretty much everything he does. So I just love watching him. But I also, once their dynamic, and that was not in any way romantic. They're just best friends because they can bring out these things. And she just reminds him, yeah, at the end of the day, you are also a person, and family is important, and people are important. And a lot of the Doctor Who to me is about somebody who could act like a god and do terrible things, instead chooses joy and humanity and righting wrongs and not subjugating people. And that's like, it's a kid's show in many ways, so it's not like they're gonna say that exactly, but I really like it when that's brought to the fore.
When Donna scolds the doctors in Fires of Pompeii, it's like, just save someone. I realize you can't
Yes,
like to have that pushback is
right,
needed.
right. Like she's just reminding him, no, it doesn't, humanity, not even humanity globally, but individuals are important. And I feel like that so often gets lost in how we look at things. And no, that person that seems unimportant, that is an important person because they're a person is what I love about the show.
It's the starfish thing.
Yeah.
You can't save all the starfish, but you can save this one.
Oh my gosh, my favorite parable. Yes, absolutely.
All right.
Well, and it's also something that kind of happens in the most current season. Although, I mean, it's not completely successful, but I like the fact that the grand solution to the big thing across the most recent season was something incredibly ordinary. That it's just
hmm
the mystery of Ruby's mother isn't actually a mystery, but the fact that it isn't totally foils the bad guy.
Right.
And I like it isn't
hmm
quite done right, but just the idea of it, like this was the right choice. That the villain is undone by the fact that this mystery actually isn't that special, but that actually makes it special, and that's kind of the Russell T Davies thought on the companions basically every time. Like, the thing that makes Donna great is she's just a temp from Chiswick, and that ends up being celebrated constantly.
Yeah. So when looking back at the series, are there any standout moments that were especially moving, exciting, or important to you? Erik, let's start with you on this one.
Oh boy, you have to start with me. Gosh, okay, I'm actually going to go. This is going to be shocking to you, Drew. I'm going to go to a moment at the end of time. I think I got that name right. Right, that's the two-parter, the end of time.
The parting of the ways and
No.
oh
I'm
oh
going to Tennant's. I'm going to
Tenants, yeah,
Tennant's
the end of time.
last episode.
Gotcha. Yes.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
When Wilkes sees him in the distance at Donna's wedding, and he salutes him and starts crying, that gets me every time.
Yeah.
That is one of the marquee moments of the entire new series for me. Out of the first season, ooh, that is much tougher. I'll go with a joke. It might be in The Unquiet Dead when the doctor says, oh, I've been traveling all this time and I'm going to die here in Cardiff. That might be it. That might be it.
Susan and Tilly, how about you?
For me, like my favorite episode across the entire run that we saw was Rogue. That, just happened. I loved it so much. The chemistry between the two of them. Oh my God, it was off the charts. And I'm not into dudes, but it was amazing. It was so good. And outside of that, I really loved Heaven Sent. That sort of that determination of the Doctor to never give up over 1 billion years. He will not give up. That hit me really hard. I really loved that. And then again, going kind of against the prevailing thought of things, I loved the entire Flex storyline. To me, that's the best part of all of Modern Who, because I don't know, there's so much in there. There's so much heart and emotion and feeling about the Doctor in there, and I absolutely love it.
Yeah, I already mentioned like the Rory and Amy stuff, and I really liked Amy's whole thing from being a kid and everything, and that is a standout, I think, among the companions. And I also really like the episode Midnight, the contained inside the shuttle or whatever.
The counterpoint to Blink, right? No, yeah, that was like Blink challenged Davies to do a self-contained episode.
Yeah, I really liked that one because it felt like a Twilight Zone kind of. Like it just felt really classic. And I also I just want to mention in general that I feel like Tennant is really good about, like, I just met you 10 minutes ago and now I'm really devastated that you died. Like, he like truly cares about people. And also that's how I would feel about a cat. I just met you 10 minutes ago and I would die for you.
Yes.
Corinna, how about you?
I'm gonna say probably the lamest thing of anyone here, because what really gets me every single time is the opening credits and the music comes up and the TARDIS going through the tunnel, and
It's so wholesome and pure. I love it.
It just, like, every time I'm like, there's possibilities. It brings me joy, and even if the episode turns out not to be great, at least I get a lot of joy out of that. So.
Yeah. Doc, how about you?
So we're doing favorite moments in all of Modern Who?
Sure. whatever stands out to you, whatever you want to talk about right now. Yes. Meaningful things.
There are moments studded throughout Modern Who where the Doctor monologues to a villain, and the monologue is usually, these are my credentials. These are everything that is against me. I have no weapons. I have no plan. I have no this. And then it ends with a warning of, but like, if you come, I will find a way, and this is your last warning, kind of thing. And I love that monologue. It happens like so many times, and I love it. And Matt Smith is great at it. He does a version in to Prisoner Zero in 11th Hour, does a version in Pandorica. That's probably my favorite one, is the one from Pandorica. And that's my favorite moment. I get chills every time it happens, no matter how many times they do it. Capaldi did it really well.
Of those moments, the Capaldi kindness speech to the masters is that, for me, is the tops of that. That, like, no, you're gonna listen to me for once. We're gonna have this conversation. Yeah. Philip, how about you?
I think two of my favorite episodes, I think, of modern television are Hell Bent and Heaven Sent. I think those are remarkable, just episodes of television in general. And I think another moment, we were talking about romantic interests between the Doctor and companions, and I think Capaldi with the Doctor and River song is, I think River is a really interesting semi-companion, but I think they're given the best romantic moment in Doctor Who that I've seen. Their last moment together that we see them on screen, where he's like, "Oh no, this is actually a day is actually 27 years, whatever that moment is." I like sobbed. I was like, "Oh my God, like, how charismatic do you have to be, you son of a bitch? Like, why can't I be like that? Why can't I do that out there?" It's just beautiful, beautiful writing. In an otherwise really not great episode, like that is not a great episode, but that moment is like incredible. And I think of this season, there are moments with Eccleston's character that point to his sort of arc where the Dalek says, "You would make a good Dalek." I was like, "Ouch, jeez, man, yeah, like you see a doctor here that's flying kind of on the edge and sort of trying to keep himself together and remember what it is to be human." And then you cut to the end of the season where he decides not to, you know, press the bomb that would blow up all of the Daleks and whatever humans are left on Earth. And it's moments like that in this first season reboot, where you see a character struggling with their humanity, and they're trying to find their better selves amidst the chaos of, maybe what they've done or what they feel they've done. Yeah, it's I think those little blips in this first season are really nicely done.
Captain Jack's moment of the
yeah, I have a more sincere season one, or series one rather, moment, which is at the end of the Doctor dances. Just this once, everybody lives.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Beautiful.
That's like maybe
Beautiful.
the pinnacle of that season.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. No, that's a great moment. Okay. We're gonna take a quick break here. But before we do, Susan and Tilly unfortunately have to be leaving us. Thank you so much for joining us today. Can you please remind audiences where they can find your work?
Sure. You can find all of our writing credits and everything that we're up to at birdguest.com. And you can find me on Blue Sky at Tilly Bridges.
And I am on Blue Sky, Susan L. Bridges, I think.
Yes. And
That
thank you
sounds
for
right.
having us. We're so sorry we couldn't stay the whole time, but it's been so great.
Yeah,
Thank you so much for joining.
Yeah.
Of course.
So thank you. The rest of our panelists will be back shortly to continue our discussion. Welcome back to our discussion on the 20th anniversary of the Doctor Who reboot. Russell T Davies has said that Buffy and Angel were a big inspiration for how he approached Doctor Who and Torchwood. Panel, do you think that was a good model? And what can other reboots learn from how Doctor Who did things? Doc, let's start with you.
I alluded to it a little bit earlier, but I think one of the best things, the best choices that RTD made, and I think he made it because he was such a big fan, is to go ahead and accept everything that's ever happened. Like to not pick and choose, to not do a thing where, oh, well, that's like that's legends, but this is real, but that not, it's like, look, everything happened. That cat people lady, that happened. That the planet with the butterfly guys, that happened. The Doctor was half human for a brief period of time. He lived in America, I guess. That and just to take it warts and all and just move forward with it is, I think, the best thing they could have done. I don't know if it had been a true reboot and Eccleston was the first Doctor having run away from Gallifrey, I don't know if we would be still talking about this version of Doctor Who, right? The other thing is that, and it angered a lot of people at the time, was to separate him from Gallifrey, from the other Time Lords, make him the last of the Time Lords, which I remember really upsetting people. But I think that is a struggle. Like the Doctor was weird and mysterious in the 60s, and nobody knew anything about the Doctor and where he was from. And he would talk about his people or my time, but you would never know what that was. In fact, the creators didn't even know he was an alien at the time. The Two Hearts thing wasn't a thing until Spearhead from Space, right? Mm-hmm. So this slow unfolding of who the Doctor is reaches a point where by the time the seventh Doctor's happening, the story editor at the time, Andrew Cartmel, is like, we need to restore mystery. Like, we've got to come up. He started coming up with this stuff that, because the show was canceled, it never actually got filled. But like this, the Long Barrow stuff and all that, which in a way, I think maybe it was a save that the show got canceled before some of that like kind of worked its way into inescapable lore. And I think Russell T Davies restores the mystery of the Doctor by detaching him from his people, by adding this time war, which is, at first you don't know anything about what happened in the time war. And so it added back the idea of the Doctor as a cipher, as an enigma, as like this kind of like, I don't know what's going on with this. It felt a little bit dangerous, and it pissed off longtime fans, but it set up the show for success.
Yeah. Erik, how about you?
Gosh, what lessons? I suppose the big one, kind of building off what Doc said, is that if you are coming back to a show 10, 20 years later, it's like you have to respect that distance too. And also I'm gonna be pedantic a little bit, because this is a huge problem in my corner of the industry, the way that the trade papers use the term reboot willy-nilly, right? To me, a reboot, because of what that word originates from, is Battlestar Galactica. We're not paying any attention to what came before. We're taking the premise, we're going to do something new, right? The fact that Sarah Michelle Gellar keeps saying revival for the Buffy thing, I'm like, I'm so glad she keeps hitting that word, because that's the right word. If she's playing Buffy, if we're coming back to all these characters 20 years later, it's a revival. And the key thing there is you kind of have to respect, well, what has happened in that time, and why are we coming back to these characters at this point in their lives? Which is definitely something that Doctor Who did brilliantly. It's like, we're coming back to the Doctor all this time later. We're going to respect the fact that time has passed, and we're going to backfill that thing. It's going to be part of the character's story. Like, if we came back to Supernatural in another 10 years, it's like, wait, how are Sam and Dean alive? And suddenly that's part of the story, right? So that's the key thing, is if you're doing a revival and not a reboot, how do you respect the fact that the viewers have been away, that the characters have aged, and what stories do you tell with that?
Yeah. I would say for me, I would say the difference between those two is a soft reboot and a hard reboot. That's the difference for me, is soft reboot is continuing the continuity and hard reboot is not. But
Right.
there is a distinction. I would agree.
Right. Yeah.
Yes.
No, I mean,
Yes.
It's just tough when you see the Hollywood Reporter
Yeah.
referring to Daredevil as a reboot.
I mean, that was a harder reboot than it should have been.
I mean, you'll say it's a harder reboot, right? But I mean, to me, it's like, but it's the same characters. We're saying that all those stories happened, right? Like, okay, all but one character is back. We're saying, that those stories happen. It's like, okay, all those things say that this isn't a reboot. Like, I understand why. I sort of understand where the trades come from, because there's a legality thing. You can't call it a season 4 because no one from the previous production is going to get paid. Therefore, it's not season 4. But at the same time, it's like, creatively, this isn't really a reboot. It's you're telling more stories with these characters versus Ronald D. Moore coming in and saying, okay, what if the Doctor's father was named Odysseus and the Doctor has to go find him? And that's the first time the Doctor actually left Gallifrey. Like, that's different. That's a reboot. And I didn't just pull that out of nowhere. That actually was a plan at one point. The Paul McGann Doctor was supposed to be the first Doctor at a very young age, and he was supposed to go looking for his father, whose name was Odysseus. Wow. And then they junked all that and decided, no, let's just keep going. Because we already have this history, so let's keep doing that.
Yeah. Phillip, how about you?
Well, I really have never watched Buffy or Angel, so I have no point of comparison, really. But what I will say,
you've seen.
I've watched. Sure, I watched reboots. And I do think, and I've seen the first few seasons of Doctor Who. I think having a thread of a storyline through a season is really smart, as opposed to like an episode by episode or story arc by story arc kind of thing, which is what they used to do, like 5-6 episodes, 3 to 6 episodes, and you move on to the next thing. Might have the same characters, but you don't really always get like that arc to the full season, right? And I do think with the sort of modern audience, it works. It works really well. Like I think another series right now that's currently running that's doing it well is Strange New Worlds, the Star Trek series, where you do have a sort of season arc in the background happening, but each episode is still relatively self-contained. But there's always that sort of continuity happening as you're watching each episode. So I think that works really well for a modern audience. One, because it's hard to watch so much, so you can jump in mid season and still have an idea of what's going on without having to follow the full continuity. Whereas sometimes, a show like I love Severance. I just watched the end of season 2, but that following like 80 shows like that is tough. You can't like it's impossible. So yeah, I think this found the perfect balance between episode by episode story with the sort of seasonal story that occurs, and Davies found a really nice balance between that only gets stronger with each season. Yeah, I think that's not having seen Buffy and Angel.
Yeah,
that's what I'll say about that.
Corinna, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I actually I, I've written some Angel comics, so I feel almost like, should I be recused from this question?
You don't need to discuss Buffy and Angel if you don't want. That's fine. Just
No,
but
no, it's
reboots, yeah.
fine. I mean, I think it's interesting though, because I do think I'm really glad that they did keep all of the warts and all continuity, um, like Doc was saying, and that it's a hard balance in a way because yeah, you want to update it, but then Doctor Who is so unique in a way. In certain ways, it's almost hard to um, put it against other things because it has this weird mechanism where the main character is completely different yet the same over decades. So the continuity is the continuity, but it kind of happened to a different guy or gal, or and it's a funny thing to compare to anything else in that way because the Doctor sort of evolves, and sometimes that in the classic biological sense of evolving doesn't mean necessarily gets better. Like any given doctor might not be a better doctor, and then but we keep that, and that's still part of the iteration that we have now, and you can see it in the clothing, and you can see it in, and it's just it's an interesting way to go, and I do understand the parallels with the Buffyverse and all of that. But in a way, it's almost sideways from, I think, the things that make the Doctor unique.
Yeah.
That was a really long way of saying, what? Doctor Who's its own thing.
Yes. Yeah. But it has still had influences and influenced other things. We wouldn't have Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy without it, and then Hitchhiker's influenced that. So
Absolutely. And I mean, it's very interesting to look at the way these things have connective tissue because, of course, the people making them are also fans of things. And it's interesting to sort that out. But I do think it's a funny thing that almost nothing that you can put against Doctor Who can totally be a one-to-one because of the unique structure. Like I
Yeah.
really think that there's nothing else that, well, maybe. I mean, I know a lot of people always say like James Bond. Okay, James Bond kind of, but
but even
nah,
that, not always. Yeah.
no. So
Yeah. Well, so the Time War is arguably the biggest change to the show. We've touched on it briefly here. When it came back, what are your thoughts on killing off the Time Lords? I mean, that is a gutsy decision that could have crashed and burned. Do you think it worked? Did you not like that? Erik, let's start with you.
It is simultaneously the best and worst thing to ever happen to Doctor Who. It is because for me, and this is going back to being an old fan, or being, having grown up with the classic series, it's very much you want to know where the Doctor's from and why they don't want to be there. Right. So it is nice to have the society of people in robes that constantly go rogue, that tell the Doctor that they can't interfere, but interfere anyway. I love how hypocritical Time Lord Society is. I love everything about it. But at the same time, let's see, mid-70s script editor Robert Holmes hated the Time Lords. And his whole thing was, it's too easy. You create a situation the Doctor can't get out of. He calls the Time Lords. Like, that's the threat. The threat of them as a narrative function is they're your way out. So removing them from the board saves you all of that, but it also loses some of the history. And that's difficult. But the greatest thing about the Time War, and I think Paul Cornell was the first person to say that, is it also makes the warts and all thing easy to do, because wait, Atlantis sunk 3 times for 3 different reasons? Time War.
Paul McGran regenerated into 3 different doctors. Time War.
Time War, exactly. Yep. The Schalke Doctor exists.
Yes.
Time War.
Yeah, Time War. Yeah. Phillip, what do you think about the Time War?
I mean, I think it again, it sort of ups the ante right away for the Doctor. Like, you're not starting at 0 coming into this new series. He's starting at 10. Like, right, he's covering up for it. He's not
starting
showing
at 9
you
and 10 is
they're
after.
starting in yeah, exactly. Yeah. But oh my God, I'm the comedian. Stop. No, it's yeah, but it and as I think both Doc and Erik said, there's that mystery again, which you're like, okay, what is going on? What's happened to the Doctor? What is this thing that he's tangling with inside? And I do think when you want to make a series your own, you have to explode something, right? Like Daredevil Born Again exploded something right away. No spoilers, but to make it its own, and to kind of explore the character in the way it wanted to, it had to explode something. And I think you'll see that just in the comic book world. You'll see that with every time a creator takes over a run of a series, they will explode something so they can deal with the character in a new and fresh way. And that's what you want. Like, you want to explore different angles of the character while staying true to who that character is. You want to push them out of their own comfort zone, not just the audience's. And I think that's the best kind of. Anytime you're too precious, I think, too precious to ideas that have come before, it's not going to work. You're going to get caught in nostalgia. You're going to get caught in repeating storylines. Like, you're going to get caught with the same sort of character beats over and over and over again. So I think not having really had experienced Doctor Who before, I can definitely see why they chose to do that. Because that's how I've seen other shows and stories work well, and to the best and fullest of their capability, because it frees you up as a creator as well. And I think that then, as much as it'll piss off audience members, it also challenges them to go on that journey with something new. So yeah, I say blow up your babies if you need to get to that next part of your story that you feel that you have the need or desire to tell. Staying too precious is not always the best way to approach a story.
Yeah. Corinna, what are your thoughts about this? About, you're a writer, do you explode the things when you start a new arc or anything like that?
Oh yeah. I totally agree with Phillip. Right on with that. I feel like especially with something like, and even in retrospect, there's been so much of this vogue lately for multiverse. Like, the entire multiverse it's in danger, and we got to fix not just this universe, but every universe is in danger. And back even that short of a time ago, which isn't really that short of a time ago, oh my God, but it was not as common to have something as large as a time war. But something like this really needed it, I think, because you have all of this weight of this history and what makes this important, and why is this an important story to tell at this time, and especially things that run for a really long time. A thing that I often run into when writing serialized stuff, or a story that's supposed to fit in between 2 episodes of some other thing, is if the story you're telling is the most important thing that ever happened to these characters. Well, no, it's not. You just saw in the last season arc that was the most important thing. How do you make it actually be important? Well, maybe something huge changed, and that was important until this thing happened. I honestly don't know how you can get around that in something as huge as Doctor Who.
Yeah. Doc, you're also a writer. How do you approach this sort of like exploding something and starting again or launching it?
Yeah, I'm working on a long-running show right now called Lego Ninjago Dragons Rising, and it is a multi-year epic. And yeah, you absolutely, I'm going to agree with Corinne 100%. Like you got to, as you move forward, you have to reevaluate. You have to kind of not be afraid to challenge, or else you're going to run into a rut. In terms of Doctor Who, I really liked Time Lords in the classic show in the sense that this was a society that is isolationist and protectionist and doesn't get involved and keeps a distance from all other species. And the Doctor couldn't live that way and had to reject it and had to steal. He's a criminal. He steals the TARDIS. He runs away. He travels the universe because he wants to experience this big, wide universe in a way that the stuffy old Time Lords refuse to. And his relationship with Time Lords is often adversarial. Like at the end of War Games, they force him to regenerate. Throughout the run of the Third Doctor, they take away his time circuit, they punish him, they exile him, they randomly scoop him up for Genesis of the Daleks. They throw into Skaro in the middle of the birth of the Daleks. Will just the time scoop. He gets scooped up in 3 Doctors, the 5 Doctors, like gets involved with all kinds of crap. Assassination attempts, winds up getting elected president of the society that he hates. I mean, it functioned really, really well in the classic series. And so when I heard, hey, no Time Lords in this new one that's going to be coming out, I was a little bummed because they're such great adversary. Like him fundamentally hating the place that he came from. I mean, I know, speaking for a lot of people who live in LA, who work in the entertainment industry, they left home because maybe the people around them back home didn't necessarily understand what they were all about, and then they came to Hollywood and basically it's the black sheep of every small town in America beached up on Hollywood, and that's the Doctor, right? The Doctor ran away from society that didn't really see him for who he was, and so I was thinking that I would be disappointed that there were no Time Lords in it. And I was utterly wrong. When I actually sat and watched 2005 and watched through, it was like, no, this is right. The Time War is right. The Doctor being alone is right. Like it evolved in that classic way from I am the reject, or I am the black sheep of the Time Lord family, to I am now the only the black sheep is now the only living representative of an entire species, of an entire race, of an entire planet. And so I think it was fantastic. That said, some of the stuff that's happened since then, where, they're back and they're time locked and they're untime locked and they were all here and now they're all again gone and they're through a crack in space. Some of it hasn't really made much sense. And in a certain sense, maybe it would have been better to just leave it all alone and just have, not pick at that wound too many times. But I mean, the setup was genius.
Yeah, no, I one thing on that front is, for me, it's always been, I feel like the show missed a step in not doing restoration properly for it to be like the season-long arc, Gallifrey is restored, the Doctor immediately leaves, and the companion says, wait, I thought you wanted to go home. And the Doctor says, why would I want to do that? Like to me, that's the thing that got missed. There wasn't.
I would have been
the moment
with that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right. The moment to celebrate. Well, the Doctor cares about this place, but the Doctor never actually wants to be there. Like that's the thing that got missed.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Which, speaking of leaving, what do you think of the decision for the first season to never leave Earth? It's always on Earth or like in orbit around Earth. For the entire first season, they only travel in time, not space outside of a space station, which is an interesting decision. Phil, what are your thoughts on that?
I think it saves on budgetary concerns in a really big way. Oh,
reusing a space station?
Let's yeah, right. Let's shoot on location in London again. It's I honestly, because I think this first season is so much about the Doctor finding his humanity again, and through Rose and through the people that he meets, and through the Rose's family. I mean, it makes perfect sense not to stray too far from that as the sort of nexus point of this season arc, and So that makes sense to me. Rose talks about going off to like other places and exploring other worlds and things like that. She certainly, especially in her talks to Mickey, telling Mickey all these stories. Um, uh, so we're almost seeing the Doctor through humanity's eyes in this first season in a big way. And I think it really grounds it in that also. Like, how does the world feel about the Doctor? How do humans feel about the Doctor? You have conspiracy theorists like getting all the like documenting like, the Doctor was seen in this photo and that photo. You know what I mean? We're not just Rose, but as humanity, we're experiencing the Doctor. And I think once you leave that, then you're seeing alien worlds experiencing the Doctor, right? And so I do think thematically, it does really kind of fit with the story they're telling, and it saves on budget.
Yeah. Corinna, how about you?
Well, I mean, at least he had the TARDIS. He didn't just have a yellow car.
The Doctor did have a yellow car, Bessie.
So, Bessie, was that
Bessie.
I believe?
Yes.
So,
Yes.
I feel like they could have stuck him on Earth in a much more final fashion, but they didn't.
Mhm.
And I agree with Phillip. I think thematically it really works, and I'm sure budget-wise it was a good choice. But certainly the fourth Doctor did all kinds of things on a cardboard budget, and that never stopped them. So I think it made a lot of sense as we got more used to this Doctor and how things were going to work in the new era. So I was fine with it. I didn't feel the lack. I assumed that if it continued on, that we'd go more places, and we have.
Yes. And Doc, to your LA metaphor, Earth was always kind of the Doctor's LA of like his second home. What are your thoughts on sticking with Earth for the first season?
To be honest, I didn't even notice at the time. I don't remember noticing or caring. It felt like we were traveling a lot of places, and I didn't really find it significant.
Erik, how about you?
Yeah. No, I didn't clock it until I read the question last night.
Yeah.
I was just like, wait. And like I did the mental thing in my head. Like, oh my God, that's right. Because the second episode is in orbit of the Earth in the year 5 million. The third episode is Cardiff in 1857, something like that.
Right, yeah.
3 and 4 were back in the modern day, and then the next we're in Denver in the Dalek episode, and that was like the faraway year of what, 2007?
I think something like that. Yeah,
it was something like that. You just, it's amazing how varied you get even just with Earth, that you don't feel the absence of alien worlds, because the Earth can be an alien world very easily. So it is. That's part of the magic trick, is you don't really notice, even for being a classic series viewer who came into this thing in the moment. It's like you don't really clock that you're not leaving Earth.
And there are still aliens. It's like they brought them to us, right? So it's not like there's a lack of aliens.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it would be weirder to have the Autons in an alien environment. Although I guess that's my pitch. That's my pitch for a Doctor Who episode. It's an alien world, and then suddenly there's Autons.
So in your opinion, what are the inherent values and themes presented in Doctor Who? And in what ways do you think that the creative team behind the show succeeded or failed in regards to communicating and establishing these values and themes? Corinna, what about you?
Well, I always come back to just the kindness and joy, and that individuals matter and can make a difference. And just the fact that the Doctor is almost always, he has down times, but he's almost always, my cats are like moving my computer around. Oops, sorry. And speaking of cats, just the fact that the Doctor is always ready to make sure that no, we're gonna persevere. We're gonna make this wrong right. And I just met these people, and that doesn't mean that they're not worth fighting for and that their problems aren't worth solving. And I just, I, I really love that. I loved that as a little kid. I still love it today. So.
Yeah. Doc, how about you?
I've actually spent a lot of time thinking about this because when Jodie Whittaker was cast, there were a lot of people, there was like a hashtag not my doctor thing where a lot of people felt that for some reason a time traveling alien that regenerates could only be one gender. And so there was a lot of people saying this isn't what Doctor Who is about. This isn't, you're changing the values of Doctor Who. What is Doctor Who? And it made me think, well, what really is Doctor Who? What is the fundamental core message of 60 years of television? Like, what is the core message? And I think that what I believe is that fundamentally it's an anti-authoritarian, anti-totalitarian, anti-fascist parable. And that the key to that is that in the early days of Doctor Who, it was being made by people who survived the Blitz, the London Blitz. And if you look at Dalek Invasion Earth, the 60s serial, Dalek Earth, it looks like the Blitz. When the Daleks invade, it looks just like after the Nazi bombings. And there's, the propaganda on the walls, the everything, right? And I think that the show was fundamentally made originally by people who survived the totalitarian nightmare that was the Nazis rolling across Europe. And there's like a motorcycle rally where I am, so I apologize. But the Daleks, in effect, are dehumanized totalitarian. They're little mini Nazi tanks that roll across planets, right? The Cybermen and their conformity and their, making you like them, and they're snuffing out. The Cybermen are a species that exists to snuff out diversity. They exist to like put you in a box, right? And the biggest whether you're looking at like 70s Doctor Who, like Tom Baker in The Sunmakers, or whether you're looking at Happiness Patrol, the Seventh Doctor episode,
the Thatcher episode.
Yeah, the Thatcher episode. The themes of totalitarianism, of fascism, of government overreach, and I think that is just baked into what Doctor Who is. Like that the Doctor fleeing his society because it's this conformist society. Like the essence of Doctor Who is an anti-totalitarian message. It is about diverse voices coming together to govern themselves. And that for me is the core value of every era of Doctor Who. Perhaps not every single episode, but every era of Doctor Who is an anti-totalitarian sort of pro-liberal democracy sort of message.
Yeah. Erik, how about you?
Wow. Kind of building on what Doc have said. I mean, it really does come back to one of the last things Capaldi says of the Doctor, which, above all else, be kind. That's ultimately it. And it's funny that it took Stephen Moffat, I don't know, 7.5 years to condense all of his speechifying down to be kind. Because that's kind of what he was getting to the whole time. And, it goes back to Terrence Dicks's, he's never cruel or coward, right? To the point where that's literally text in the show now, that at one point the Doctor says that the name, the Doctor, is a promise to never be cruel or cowardly. And, 4.5 years later, we get to that being condensed to be kind. And that is the brilliance of Moffat as the writer, is that he can get it down to the bare essence. And the bare essence is be kind. And that doesn't mean you're not going to fail at it. And certainly the Capaldi Doctor fails at being kind. But that's the thing to strive for. Like the reason to go out into the world or out into the universe is to see it all, to experience, but also be kind while you're there. And that's the show.
Phillip, how about you? What themes stick out with the show for you?
I mean, I think one of the important themes for me, which actually deals with everything else that's been talked about, is that you always have a choice. You don't have to press the button just because you're angry. You don't have to even in the final moment where it's your life on the stake. You have the choice between dignity or being terrible, being like an animal, I guess. Uh, and to never give up on the fact that you have a choice. Uh, I think that's a beautiful message, and that's the one I keep coming back to as well with Doctor Who is no matter how difficult something is or how hopeless something feels, like you have a choice going forward. And sometimes that's just a personal choice. Maybe you can't affect the outcome necessarily yourself, which I like it when we get to the moments in Doctor Who where he's like, yeah, I can't do anything. This is in someone else's hands. And ultimately, that does allow people like Rose or other people to step up and solve the situation that he just can't fix. And that shows that even those characters have a choice and can make real change going forward or can save the day.
Yeah, I think. Oh, sorry.
No, please. If you're going to add something,
Philip's getting to the heart of something that's really important to Doctor Who, which is building coalitions. Like there's that moment when the Doctor can't. There's so many moments when only the Doctor can save things, and that happens. But then there's moments where the Doctor, like Philip was just saying, the Doctor's powerless, and everything's going to be gone. But then his friends step up, and his, it's the Stolen Earth idea, right? Where Sarah Jane calls Jack, and they call them, and they call them, and it's building this coalition, building this network that carries forward the value that the Doctor inspires. And it's always a network. It's always a coalition of very diverse, very nonconformist people. Like ultimately, the three most famous alien villains in Doctor Who are Daleks, are Daleks, Cybermen, and Sontarans. The Daleks are encased in these identical metal casings, and they go out. The Cybermen force you to be like them. They convert you, and there's even a religious sort of they always talk about conversion. There's almost this religious undertone to it, like they're doing missionary work or something. And then the Sontarans, who are literally clones of one another, and who roll. And there's even the Time Lords, conformists. Like the worst villains of Doctor Who are the conformity villains. And the greatest heroes of Doctor Who are the ragtag bands of people who have nothing to do with one another, who get connected out of something other than a shared identity, a shared conformity, and who fight this conformity. It's a non-conformist, iconoclastic message.
Yeah, I think by the end of Tennant's run, we see what Mickey and Martha fighting together, don't we? At one point, and he like waves at them or something like that from it. And it's like you're like, yeah, they didn't have any. The only connection they have is the Doctor, and here they are taking the lessons they've learned from the Doctor and the lessons they've learned from exploring together, and they're fighting together against whatever comes at them. And it is, yeah, it's lovely. It's lovely to see that.
Well, and the modern version of UNIT, just the notion that Kate is always kind of out there trying to find former companions and being like, "Hey,
yeah,
here's my card.
Join us."
yeah.
Yes.
Here's a card. We'll pay for Wilf's palliative care. Like, yes, please.
Yeah.
Whenever Kate shows up and like, "Hey, you want a job?" Like, that's awesome.
I will say that was such a brilliant moment in this past season, though, when she shows up when Ruby is running on her own, and you're like, "Oh, Kate's gonna fix it." Nope.
And then Kate can't fix it. Yeah.
Yes. So this year is Fanbase Press's 15th anniversary, and we're making community our theme of 2025. You can learn more about the hashtag Build Your Community initiative at www.fanbasepress.com. But I wanted to take a moment to discuss what, if any, Doctor Who has to say about the concept of community and its importance in our lives. And we've been discussing this, but what are everyone's thoughts of the Doctor Who community, both the characters and outside in the real world, the impact this show has had on bringing people together? I know during Chibnall's era, it was Space for Everyone was their theme. Erik, let's start with you.
Gosh, I'm actually gonna go with an on the ground answer, which is go to Gallifrey. I mean, if you want to see what Community looks like, it is so wonderful to be immersed in the Doctor Who fandom in real life. Like on the internet, it is the Daleks version of Doctor Who fandom. But when you're actually in a room with a bunch of Doctor Who fans, it is, you know, this loving embrace. It is this feeling of warmth. It's, yeah, we're going to have our disagreements, but we all actually care about this thing. And that is remarkable to witness, to see people from all over the world coming together and enjoying a thing, like, and being respectful even in their disagreements, because no one is coming at this from bad faith. You know, it's remarkable, and that's something that I, especially this past Gallifrey, I was just like, this is so wonderful to be here and experience that, and not be, you know, bombarded by people who are doing hashtag not my doctor, or calling Shudigawa with a pretender, or anything like that. It just, that's your demonstration of community, at least for me in this instance.
Yeah. Phillip, how about you?
I do think seeing honestly, I haven't experienced much of the Community as a whole outside of the series or little interactions like this. I've never been to Gallifrey, and that's something maybe I need to do. But I do think the series, yeah, right. I do think the show, though, especially, you know, the kind of the revival. I think one of the important concepts is how important family can be, or even found family. How it grounds us, how it keeps us moving forward to have that support, how it changes us at times when we are dealing with really difficult things. And it's something that the Doctor, who always ends up alone at some point, keeps gravitating back to. Like he needs the companion just as much as the companion, you know, needs him. Like he needs people around him to keep him together, to keep him moving. You know, and I think that is a really important concept in the show, is that concept of family. And done beautifully. Davies seems to get it, and that's carried over throughout every concurrent season. So I like that a lot.
Yeah. Corinna, how about you?
I'm going to give a sideways answer to this because my day job, I work at a museum, so I'm immersed in science. But a thing that's really lucky about that is I get to work with researchers from all over the world and people coming in from all different, coming at different research problems. I mean, this is biological sciences for me, but a thing that unites everybody is curiosity. And I feel like one thing that we see with the Doctor that's sort of unique to his character is he's always curious about everything. It doesn't matter, like somebody's a shopkeeper who's never left their little town, and he's just like, this is absolutely fascinating. Tell me more about your life. Tell me about your rock collection. What is this pebble? What is this piece of hardware? What is this weird worm creature? What does it want? And he's just always interested. And I feel like that curiosity breeds empathy. And I've seen this like just connecting with folks. Like the other day, I had a really in-depth conversation with a researcher from Mexico about fossil echinoderms. And we were both really into it. And we don't know anything about each other's lives. But after that, we had this connection over this sort of esoteric subject. And I feel like keeping that and in centering that sort of curiosity can breed community. And that's something that it feeds into the anti-authoritarian thing too, because I feel like that's something that authoritarians hate is they're against curiosity. They want to ban books. They want to make it so nobody is interested in what that guy over there is like. Like maybe that guy's super interesting, but to maintain control, you got to think that guy sucks, even though I don't know him. And I feel like this is what is something I really try to keep in my life that is a center point of Doctor Who.
Yeah. Doc, what are your thoughts?
That was brilliantly said. curiosity as the seed for empathy, and being what totalitarians hate. They don't want you to empathize with the other person. Like, for totalitarians to hold their grip on power, they have to make you hate the bad guy, because then they are the heroes that are fighting the bad guy, right? And so this idea that if you're curious about someone, I mean, look, I grew up in the 80s. I grew up in the Cold War. We thought our idea of what Russians were had absolutely no relationship to the Russian people, because we believe they all hate America, and they all love communism, hate America, they like whatever. Our idea of what Russians people got blown out of the water the second we met Russian people. Like, it's just not, there's just wasn't truth to it. And that curiosity and open curiosity, as opposed to, like, I've already decided who these people are and I'm going to go confirm my data. That great Tom Baker quote, or Fourth Doctor quote, about making the facts try to fit your decision rather than making your decision I've bastardized the quote, but about making data fit what you've already decided, as opposed to following the data to make a decision, an informed decision.
Yeah. So if people enjoyed, Doctor Who, their relaunch, what other films, TV shows, comics, etc., would you recommend to people to consume? Doc, let's stick with you.
Blake Seven, Terry Nation created the Daleks, made another sci-fi show. He wanted it to cross over with the Daleks, and it never did for reasons. But Blake Seven is a weird space rebel show, and I recommend it. Particularly the first series, which for some reason they call Series A, for Doctor Who fans.
Yeah. Corinna, how about you?
I actually made a note, because hopefully I'm not going to butcher the author's name, but The Doors of Eden by Adrian Tchaikovsky, I believe is how you say his name. But this is a many worlds type of thing, but it comes at it from this idea that the fabric between these different worlds is breaking down, but some of them, they're not all human centered. Some of them, it's like trilobites are the ones that achieve sentience. And it's a very interesting way to go at this thing that we've all seen a million times, but it's also very centered around the main characters, a couple of young women who are a couple, but they're like this great. They're not perfect people, but they're perfect together. It's really fun to watch their story unfold and how they connect with other characters, even giant spacefaring trilobites, just because they're interested and want to know more. And I think if you like Doctor Who, you'll like this book.
Yeah. Phillip, what would you recommend?
Well, I've already mentioned Strange New Worlds, which I think is a fantastic series. But I will say, Hitchhiker's Guide, which has already been mentioned. Beyond the books, I would highly recommend listening to all audio drama versions, which it started out as audio drama, moved to book, then moved back to audio drama, and was finished off by Dirk Meggs later on, who worked on the original audio drama series. So there's a connected creative tissue there.
The Fifth Doctor was on the show. He was the dish of the day.
Yes. So I'd highly recommend listening to, not just reading the books, but going to the audio dramas and experiencing those, because they're a hoot. They are a hoot. So yeah, my recommendation.
Erik, how about you?
All right, I'm going to go with a quote first. I will not be pushed, filed, stamped, indexed, briefed, debriefed, or numbered. My life is my own. Which comes from a television series called The Prisoner, which is my recommendation. In part because if Doctor Who was most important British television that I saw as a child, The Prisoner is the second most important. It is also anti-authoritarian. It is wondrously mad. It has so many great actors on it, and like Doctor Who, you can get lost in it forever, but it's only 19 episodes.
I always wanted to do an episode where the Doctor is essentially sent to the village, where you do the village and he's there, has to escape. Yeah.
Brilliant. It would be brilliant.
Right? Like it writes itself. Well, if you enjoyed this podcast, we also have a Fanbase Feature panel discussion where you'll see several familiar faces on that one, where we discuss the Doctor Who 60th anniversary, The Star Beast, which was out before the 20th anniversary because wibbly wobbly, timey-wimey reasons. And also, Erik is a co-host of Tread Perilously, which has dozens of Doctor Who episodes where you discuss the lowest rated episodes, but then with Doctor Who, you've done so many.
That's the thing. I was like explaining this podcast to people at Gallifrey, and I was telling them the list of the episodes that we're going to do in April, and everyone was like, "Those aren't bad, though." Like, yeah, no, we've been doing this show for so long. We're kind of out of bad episodes. So
yes. Well, that wraps things up for this episode of the Fanbase Weekly. Thank you to my panel for joining me today. Be sure to like us on Facebook and Twitter, and subscribe and rate the show. Before we go, please, everyone, can you remind everyone where they can find you online? Erik, let's go with you.
Okay, I'll go. Yeah, I'll go first. Let's see. The best place to find me on Blue Sky and for now Instagram, Erik S. Amaya. And then, of course, treadperilously.com is where you can find the podcast. We do more than Doctor Who, but April is our Doctor Who month, so we are currently recording those episodes. I can tell you right now, the first one that we're doing is Eve of the Daleks. So get ready for Dalek voices. And let's see, of course, comicon.com, comicon.com, for daily reviews, news, and occasionally opinions of Comic-Con culture, right? So toys, video games, tabletop games, comics, of course, and occasionally movies. And every so often you can find my articles on Rotten Tomatoes. I just interviewed Tony Gilroy for Andor season 2, and I believe that's up already. So here we go.
Nice. Phillip, where can people find your work?
You can find me Blue Sky and Instagram at Phillip Creates with 2 L's, and then I produce my own little podcast group called POPSKL, and that's POPSKL POD, and we're out there in the multiverse of social media sites and Spotify's and Amazon's and stuff. So you can find us. We do stuff like this.
Corinna, how about you?
I'm every place. Well, mostly Blue Sky these days. Not on Twitter anymore. At just my name, Corinna Bechko, at Blue Sky or wherever. I'm still on Instagram too. And I have a website, also my name, that I pretty much never update. I will also be on 2 panels during WonderCon, one on Friday with Fanbase at 1:00 and one on Sunday, I think also at 1. And I have a new book coming out for Free Comic Book Day. It's the number 0 of BLOODTYPE, and then that series starts in June. So.
Nice. Doc, and where can people find you?
Well, I've the 3rd season of my show, Lego Ninjago Dragons Rising, drops April 17th. In the US, it's on Netflix and also Peacock, shared exclusive. It's all over the world, though, so check local listings. I got a new graphic novel out called Essentials. You can find it at your local comic book store. If they don't have it, they can order it for you, or you can find it certainly online. Yeah, I'm on also Instagram and Blue Sky under the handle Otherland71.
Great. Don't forget that you can also email us with your comments, questions, concerns, and all their geeky inquiries at thefanbaseweekly@gmail.com. Thank you as well to our sponsor, Boots and Pup. Think your life is weird? Meet Boots and Pup, 2 alien besties surviving work, friendship, and intergalactic mayhem. Big laughs, big trouble, and big-headed bosses await. Jump into the adventure now at bootspup.com. Thank you for listening. This has been Drew Siragusa for Fanbase Press, where we celebrate fandoms and create new ones. Until next time.